Ghanaians elect a new president amid massive economic and environmental challenges. The West African nation is rich in natural resources, but most Ghanaians have never reaped the benefits. Meanwhile, those desperate to earn a living have turned to illegal gold mining, destroying the environment and severely endangering public health. Can any elected leader turn that around? And can Ghana survive if they don't? I'm Andrea Sankey, and today's Newsmaker is Ghana. Well, it's been said that there is no land in Ghana that doesn't have gold. In fact, a huge part of the country used to be called the Gold Coast. On top of that, Ghana began extracting oil from its own offshore fields in 2010. Yet despite those riches, the economy has been firmly stuck in reverse. Its debt to GDP ratio is closing in on 100%. It's suffering high inflation, plus its relatively large, young, and educated workforce struggles to make a living. Here's a look now at some of Ghana's challenges as it prepares to elect new leaders.
Ghana is heading to the polls with economic hardship looming large. The country has been in crisis since 2022. Despite slight improvements after IMF bailouts and reforms, ordinary citizens are still carrying the burden. Prices of basic goods continue to rise, pushing more people into poverty. Government debt was 72% of its GDP in December last year. But thanks to its social welfare program, the youth is more educated, but there is also more unemployment.
There is thousands of graduates that are free from education, but there is no job. They are just doing petty jobs, and those petty jobs, they cannot sustain them.
And unemployment is pushing many to illegal gold mining. Ghana is the world's 10th biggest exporter of the precious metal, but its unregulated extraction is poisoning the country's rivers and eating up farmlands. The government's forestry agency says illegal gold mining, known locally as galamsey, has also destroyed more than 4,000 hectares of Ghana's forest reserves. Environmental concerns have sparked a wave of protests in the capital Accra, calling for an end to galamsey.
We, the youth of Ghana, are concerned about the pollution of our water bodies because water is life. Crops need water to grow. We human beings, we need water to grow. And animals also need water to survive. So all that we are saying is, we are calling on the president and his leadership together to save our water bodies. Illegal mining is destroying us.
The next government's job is not easy. The ruling New Patriotic Party's candidate is the current Vice President, Mahamudu Bawumia. His work for Ghana's digitalization and technological transformation earned him the title Mr. Digital. He's also the head of the government's economic management team that so many blame for the country's worst crisis in years. But Bawumia is asking for a chance to change things around.
I don't need a honeymoon. I know what I want to do from day one in the presidency. Give me the chance to transform this nation.
His main rival is the National Democratic Congress candidate John Mahama. He has been a veteran in Ghana's politics and led the country between 2012 and 2017. But his term was marred by several corruption allegations. In one instance, Mahama was found in breach of the country's gift laws for accepting a car worth $100,000 from a foreign contractor. He called the elections a turning point for the country. And he has a long list of pledges to rescue Ghana, curbing inflation, creating jobs, promoting women's rights, and ending corruption.
We need to reset our democracy, to reset our governance, to reset our economy, to reset our finances, reset our agriculture, reset our infrastructure, environment, reset our health and education sectors, and everything else that we hold dear as Ghanaians.
The country has a long history of smooth elections and peaceful transfers of power. Yet the stakes have never been this high. With the economic crisis, raging inflation, and an environmental catastrophe unfolding, Ghana's facing a formidable set of challenges.
Well, Joining me now to debate what Ghanaians are expecting from their election and if the economic and ecological damage can be reversed are all from Accra, Deputy National Organizer at the National Democratic Congress and UN Sustainable Development Goals advocate, Elikem Kotoko. Hayford Atta Krufi is the former UK branch chairperson of Ghana's new Patriotic Party. And Umaru Sanda Amadu is a journalist and TV host on Channel 1. Thanks all so much for being with me. There really is so much damage to repair, and most Ghanaians blame bad leadership for it. So, Umaru, you now have two candidates who've served the very governments that Ghanaians blame for the economic, environmental, and health disasters that we're seeing. So, are voters looking forward to this vote?
Yeah, I think voters are really torn between the devil and the deep blue sea, if you like. Our democracy is 30 years old, since 1992, when we reverted to democratic rule. The National Democratic Congress has ruled this country for 16 of those years, the 32 years. And the New Patriotic Party has ruled for 16 of those 32 years. So the two major parties have essentially divided the country's power history into two, and they share that apiece. Now, we do not have only two political parties. We have a number of political parties. However, we almost run a de facto two-party state, and so that is the situation. So, even though there are 13 persons on the ballot and 12 living human beings on the ballot, the tendency to have people vote for other parties is very, very, very low. And I'm saying this based on our history and precedents. Our third force parties, our so-called third force parties, have not done any good in the past. In the year 2000, there was a very vibrant third force group. They did not do that well. The United Ghana Movement and the National Reform Party, which were led by very significant party members, they didn't make any difference, even though they broke away from major parties.
So, but effectively, you're saying that voters just feel they have the same two choices that they've really had since independence, more or less. Not necessarily that motivating.
Not since independence, but since 1992.
Sorry,
yes.
Since 1992, exactly. Let me ask Elikem, though, because representing one of those parties, this is what your candidate is facing. And I want you to explain just how bad, for example, the environmental damage really is. I mean, Ghana is actually facing the prospect now of having to import water into a country that should be mostly covered in rainforest. I mean, the irony really can't get richer. These challenges are immense.
Yes, thank you. It is very grave in our country at the moment. It is, however, also instructive to say that before my party was leaving power, there were footages that showed how clean our water bodies were. And that is because we did not countenance, we did not indulge or allow for such kind of pollution or such kind of activities that destroyed our water bodies. As an advocate for the UN SDGs goal number 13, which is on climate change, and also for number 6, which is on sanitation, sorry but to say that the present government has failed woefully in combating that. And by so doing, I mean that there's been a lot of illegal mining, which has not been properly coordinated, which has damaged our water bodies. And like you said, we now have to be importing water. The extent of damage is such that experts say it will take about 2 to 3 decades, if not 4 decades, to restore the water bodies. I am so sure you are privy to some of the videos of people mining illegally and conducting themselves in manners that destroys our water bodies. The unfortunate truth about this is that government set up task force comprising of military, police, etc., but nothing really gets achieved because some of these military personnel also become compromised. They go arresting people, but never have they brought even an ounce of gold as what they have seized from these people. Secondly, about 95% of the people they arrest are just employees who have been employed by the major owners of the concessions. And a lot of revelations through investigative journalists have told us that many of the people who own these concessions are engaged in this illegal mining, or galamsey as we term it, are people within the government of the regime. So it becomes very difficult for the president to crack the whip because maybe he could even be indirectly benefiting from the proceeds of the actions of his own people. These are known facts, and Anas Arimeyao, Anas and other journalists, Erastus Asaridonko, have done very stellar works, investigative pieces on that have revealed that kingpin stalwarts within the party, the NPP, are engaged in this activity. And so they have sacrificed the interests of state for their selfish individual gains, which is not the case.
Well, let's ask Hayford about that then. I mean, is most of the damage, has it been on your party's watch?
Right, thank you very much. It's quite disingenuous for the opposition to put the blame on the watch of the government, because unfortunately, as much as the illegal mining has had devastating effect on our water bodies and on our environment, it has the result of politics, the politics of the NDC. In 2020, it became an election promise that they gave to the illegal miners that should NPP arrest them, they would come and remove all of them from prisons because they support illegal mining. They support what we the term galamsey. It became an election issue. And for that reason, all the mining communities, the constituencies within the mining communities, NPP, we lost because we clamped down on illegal mining. We clamped down on galamsey, and the NDC supported them, and therefore we lost on all the seats. Very, very soon, it has become a mantra for the NDC that they should continue with the illegal mining because they support that. As Elikem rightly said, we have established an interministerial committee that is looking to solve the problem. Our manifesto as a political party has been to create a much, much better and a humane way of issuing licenses so that the illegal mining will go away and our water bodies will get clean.
Okay.
Now, even we have given our cocoa farmers incentives such that they will not allow their farms to be used for illegal mining by giving them options so that they would maintain their cocoa farms. So indeed, it is on the doorstep of the opposition and making it a political issue. That is why the illegal mining is getting worse and worse.
I need to come back to Umaru at this point because we're hearing everyone blame everyone else. And in the meantime, the damage has been done. And even if it's actually stopped at this point, Umaru, what about even, I want to speak about the people of Ghana and the long-term health consequences, not just for all the illegal miners that have been exposed to horrible toxic chemicals, including mercury, but as well as for the people who've now had their water sources poisoned. I mean, is Ghana even prepared to provide for these people, for their basic health care? What are going to be the consequences now long-term for people?
The Ghana Water Company Limited has told us we are in very difficult times. Treating water is more expensive than ever. And I've seen them do the counter-blaming. But what I would have to say is that since our records began, this is the first president who has put his presidency on the line to fight illegal mining. And he has done a very terrible job at that. And so the situation, and my media house was the first in 2017 to start this campaign called Stop Galamsey Now. The government decided to jump in, and there was massive public support for the government's work where they were deploying soldiers, they were deploying drones, and imposing a sort of an emergency situation in these mining areas and working hard to solve them. And then soon enough, members of the government became compromised, members of the armed forces who were being used became compromised, and then the battle has been lost. And the president himself, who said he has put his presidency on the line, and his government have really done not that much to fix this issue of illegal mining. So it is a messed up situation. As to whether the people would recover, don't forget it's the same people who are really polluting the water bodies. And the reason they are polluting is not because they want to harm Ghana. It's simply because they want to make ends meet. And if making that ends meet means polluting water bodies, people forget their conscience when it comes to making money or having bread on the table. And that's why they do what they do. And I think the only way we can get out of this is to prevent mining completely, have a moratorium for a year, and put a state of emergency in these mining areas. And if there are big shots who are engaging in the trade, plug them out, arrest them, prosecute, and jail them for that. Because the smaller people at the lower level who are engaged in this mining do not have the capacity to buy the huge machinery that is used for the illegal mining that we see. So we want the bigger guys rather to be dealt with, not the small guys who are simply trying to make ends meet.
Right. I mean, Elikem, is that possible that they can take down the top guys, or do you think they're too, at this point, intertwined with the organized crime, for example, that's been brought in with the corruption of officials?
That is the very reason why I stated that more of the people that this government have pretended to arrest are the small guys who are not even owning machines, etc., but they are just employees of the big guys. And therefore, our flag bearer stated clearly that when we come to power, we'll release all those guys because they are innocent victims of the fight. And rather, we'll go after the big guys who own the machinery that are used to mine the gold. And so we would make sure we go along that way. And further, I mean, just as you listen to Umaru Sanda, who is a media person, the president has failed woefully in his fight against this menace when he said he was going to put his presidency on the line. It is again instructive for me to remind your viewers that there was a Chinese lady called Aisha Huan, who was even arrested in this country, involved in galamsey and many other illicit activities. The president actually returned her to her country without any prosecutions, whilst locals were arrested and dealt with. The lady found her way back into the country again, and when confronted, the president said he couldn't tell if she was deported at the time or what have you. This is the president who virtually knew nothing about anything happening in the country, and most unfortunate. You see, the reason why these things matter so much to us is that sustainable UN SDG Sustainable Goal 3 also talk about good health. And we are now having mothers to give birth to children that are very deformed, some with just one eye or no limb, etc., which is an action of this. It will be very sorry for anyone to want to blame us, the opposition, that this is politics. It means that you who has been given power to govern has failed woefully at using that power to ensure that the right things are done. We in the opposition are only telling you this is right, that is wrong. We say what we believe is the right thing to be done. So you must follow it. For instance, to conclude, the interministerial commission that was set up, there was an investigative piece that almost exposed everybody on that board. Some of them have been rewarded by the president by being given further appointments after we found them on footages collecting bribes. One of them is Krufi, the other is Charles Bisu, who are standing to be members of parliament today in other places. What does this tell the people? That the president is indulging or condoning such acts. And I believe that my elder brother at the other side should tell us clearly what the positions are. We have stated as a party that we want to make sure that people are clearly educated and given sustainable alternative means to livelihood.
And Hayford, I understand that you feel the opposition is just as much implicated in illegal mining and the corruption behind it as anyone else in government. But I need to ask you actually, because we did see under your government widespread protests over illegal gold mining and the government mismanagement of it. Now, dozens of people were arrested. That really did outrage the public. So tell us then what has happened to those protesters and activists. Are they still in prison? Because here you are facing the accusation that the government is continuing to prosecute the smaller people that are looking to make things better for themselves and for the country rather than going after the big players. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, it's the disingenuity of the opposition that has led to all this. As I indicated, this was never an election issue. This was something that, as a nation, we were all fighting collectively to ensure that our water bodies got clean and we mined humanely. Ghana has been mining since 1897, and we've never had a situation like this, and it has never become a political issue. It is when the NDC weighed into this by sending people to the mining communities to encourage them to continue the illegal mining. That is what emboldened them. That is what led to the widespread the destruction of our water bodies, because they were assured that even if they were arrested and prosecuted, they would be given amnesty when they come to power. And indeed, I mean, there are in as much as Elikem is mentioning names of NPP personnel, we could also mention names of NDC personnel who have been involved in it, who are members of parliament in key areas in Western North, where the illegal mining has been extremely exacerbated on our water bodies. And indeed, this blame game does not help us as a nation. Even in this election, in this campaign, we agreed that all the presidential candidates will come and sign a pact such that we would not make it an issue, and therefore we would have a whole way of dealing with it after the NDC refused. The NDC refused because the mining communities have been their hunting grounds. That is where they get their votes from, because they are the ones who are behind them. The Chinese, the Ghanaians, all of them. It is the NDC who are behind them, and they have their own president and the running mate, presidential candidate, and the running mate going, and there are videos of these people who have been captured saying that they will give the galamseyers the free hand to continue with the illegal mining when they come to power. So it is something that the blame should be put on the doorstep of the NDC.
Well, everyone feels that every leader in Ghana should in some way, it seems, be held responsible, because this has been the pattern for many years. Hold on, though. I do want to get back to Umaru, because the clock is against us. And, you know, Umaru, the damage, as we said, it has been done. And we have to remember, as our panelists pointed out, you know, mining has been in Ghana since 1897, I believe was the date he quoted. So here we are, decades and decades later. Why has Ghana still never been able to bring more of the natural resource value chain to Ghana? I mean, if we look at gold, you have very few gold refineries and zero certification, for example, like South Africa has. And instead, so much of the value of your mining and your natural resources ends up going abroad. Why has no Ghanaian government ever been able to secure that value chain?
Well, let me just remind you that Ghana, before independence, was called a gold coast. That should tell you how much gold reserves you have here. And to be honest, we have been exploiting gold for decades. And there are royalties that are paid by these major mining companies, and it is part of what we have in our budget. And if it comes to natural resources, generally, we have discovered oil and petroleum has been helpful for us. Currently, the government's biggest program, the Free Senior, has been funded by oil resource. So our natural resources, we may have mismanaged it, but I think we have also largely benefited from it. Now, the question would be, moving forward from here, what do we do? Let's put in stringent measures to protect the resources we have, because it is only by protecting those resources and ensuring that the mining is done responsibly, would this country benefit, because we may end up digging up the gold from the water bodies for our personal gains. And mind you, this is not a government thing. It is private individuals supported by politicians, businessmen, Chinese operatives, and nationals who are doing this. That money doesn't go into the national kitty. It is generally money that is earned or owned and earned by private people. There should be a deliberate decision by the government to say, we are sending soldiers in there. Nobody should mine for the next 1 year. Everybody who's going to mine must have a concession, and that concession should not allow the person to mine in one, a water body, two, in a river, in a forest reserve. If those two things are done, mining per se is not a wrong, because countries have developed for mining. We can also do responsible mining, and that's the only way we can proceed.
I'll tell you what, we only have 2 minutes left. Let me give 1 minute, Elikem, for your final thoughts, and then Hayford, 1 minute for you. Go ahead, Elikem.
It is such an irony that a government in power is trying to blame the opposition for the menace we find ourselves in, which means they are very empty on finding solutions to it in the first place. Secondly, he just lied. There has not been any pacts relating to mining, etc., that the NDC refused to sign. If it is the peace pact he wants to talk about, then he needs to address himself well with issues happening in the country. Maybe he's in London, he's not aware. Our flag bearer has signed that peace pact actually some days ago. He should refresh his memory on that. And how interesting that in this regime, they have issued over 1,300 or 1,400 new mining licenses to individuals compared to any in the past. From independence to when we left power, it was not even up to 150. And they have issued over 1,400 thereabout. That should tell you the gravity of this. And he can say there are videos, but I'm glad I'm talking to a media house. You have evidence of how all these things have gone on. Even protesters were high-handedly managed by the security forces when all they were expecting was that, look, let's resolve this matter.
Hayford?
And ego had the better part of them.
Hayford, final minute. Go ahead.
Yeah, Andrea, what the protesters is talking about, they were all NDC operatives. After they have been to the mining site, they come to Accra by day, and then they pretend that they are protesting against. It is the disingenuity of it all. And of course, when you are protesting, you do not block major highways. And I think the two should be separated from each other. What they were doing in Accra had nothing to do with galamsey. It was just mayhem that they were causing in the cities. But of course, the peace pact he's talking about is not what I'm talking about. And I'm talking about an agreement which was to be formed among all the political parties that we would not make it a campaign issue. But they refused it, and they were already on the field, campaigning that they would allow illegal mining. Now, what we are talking about is proper license. And as Umaru was saying, and I don't know whether he has read our manifesto, because clearly what he's saying is what has been captured in our manifesto, that when we come, there's going to be a more humane way of issuing licenses and going on with legal mining,
Hayford,
so that
we'll have to see what the election result produces and whether you can enact that or not. But I'm very sorry, guys. We're actually completely out of time for this edition of the Newsmakers. I need to thank all three of you really so much for being with us. Greatly appreciated. We'll have a discussion perhaps after the election again. But for now, I'd like to thank our viewers as well for watching. Remember, you can follow us on X, and do be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.